Do you like energy denial? Then we've got ourselves a deck for you. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're going to take a look at an interesting deck list, one that's probably not going to be quite as good as some of the others that we've featured, but definitely interesting. That is featuring Rhyperior V, a very, very powerful card from the new Darkness Ablaze set. It's going to start discarding energy, so I hope you're ready for a bit of a stall variant. Not super stally, it's still attacking, which is more important. But before we take a look, if you'd like to subscribe, please consider doing so. We'd always appreciate you coming back for more. And whilst you're down there clicking that subscribe button, you can also give the video a like as well. That would be greatly appreciated. But hey, without further ado, let's take a look at the list and see just how Rhyperior V is going to work. So another really interesting list here featuring Rhyperior V. This one we haven't seen a lot of talk about, but it is definitely an interesting card to say the very least. Its first attack, called Drill Run in our translations that we've seen. We don't have the English version of the card here, but that's what we think the card is called, is a fighting double colorless attack, cost does 80 damage, and then discards an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So that in combination with obviously Welder and Fire Energy is probably going to be a relatively easy attack to deal. That way we can discard an energy and deal 80 damage to our opponent's Pokemon, put on a little bit of pressure whilst also knocking our opponent back a turn with their energy attachments. It's really important to remember as well that this fighting type Pokemon will have a really solid matchup against Eternatus, not only removing an energy from that deck, but also hitting for 160, so you're half hitting every single time. So definitely worth persisting with. We also have a second attack that, I'm not going to say that it's super usable, but it is achievable. It is fighting triple colorless, does 210, called Heavy Rock Cannon. If you use this attack, then you cannot attack this turn with Heavy Rock, next turn, sorry, with Heavy Rock Cannon again. So once you've put on enough pressure with your first attack, 80 damage, getting those nice little chips in where you can, then you can potentially finish off a Pokemon with 210 damage and put the game beyond doubt. So this is a really, really cool Pokemon. Obviously not necessarily super consistent since we are playing this Welder engine, but it does allow for a couple of extra cards to come into play. So let's talk about those now. We have 2 copies of Volcanion here. Flare Starter, very, very powerful. You'll probably see it floating around a little bit more often now that we've got things like Center Scorch and Charizard VMAX coming back into the format. So Flare Starter now very, very powerful. If you go first, then you can attach 1 energy on your second turn. But if you go second, then you can attach 3 on your first turn of attacking. So very, very good attack. High Heat Blast also super useful. And we also get to use a couple of V cards that haven't seen a huge amount of play. Specifically Torkoal V with Combustion Pillar and Steam Crush. Again, a second opportunity for you to start discarding energy. And also Ninetales V with Nine-Tailed Shapeshifter, the ability to copy any of your opponent's active Pokemon. Words are really struggling for me today. Your opponent's active Pokemon, you can choose any of their attacks and use it for your attacks. So you can potentially get something like a Zacian Knockout with this, potentially even a couple of other Pokemon as well. Definitely worth taking a look at. That's all for our attacking Pokemon. We've also got Crobat, Dedenne, and Eldegoss, one of each of those 3 support Pokemon in this list. Crobat, obviously, the new support that we're going to be utilizing quite frequently. Dedenne, the old favorite, and Eldegoss to help us find ourselves some supporters. I am not entirely sure about this Pokemon line, whether it can work without Jirachi, but we do have a couple of other ways to go about finding the things that we need. Obviously, Welder is very, very important. We run 4 of them, but we also run 4 copies of Pokegear as well, so we can potentially look at the top 7 cards and find ourselves a Welder. And that's pretty much all that we need to get ourselves going. If we're able to Welder, attach a couple of energy, and then find one of our 3 fighting energy, we're going to be able to attack as soon as turn 1 with this Rhyperior deck. So it's definitely achievable. If you're going second, you can very easily get an attack off and start reducing your opponent's attachments. So that would be really, really strong. The rest of our supporters, a bit of a mixed match. It's kind of like a We're not quite sure what we want to do with them just yet. There are obviously a lot of options. We've got 2 research and the Marnie as extra draw out. Marnie along with Reset Stamp is our only opponent disruption that we have. We also have 2 copies of Boss, which can obviously get yourself key knockouts. Since we're able to do 210 damage with Heavy Rock Cannon, it is a possibility. We also have 1 copy of Birdkeeper in the list as well. Again, I'm not entirely sure whether this card is required, but it's definitely interesting, and that's what testing cards out is all about, right? Interesting choices. When it comes to our items, we already mentioned Poker Gear, which is very important to help us try and find those welders as soon as we possibly can. We also have 4 copies of Quick Ball, just for something different. We want to get those Pokemon out as soon as possible. All of our Pokemon in this list are basic, so everything's searchable by Quick Ball. We also have 3 Switch in relation with this Birdkeeper. It's almost like having 4, but obviously not quite. We don't really mind so much if we get ourselves a Rhyperior in the active. We've got a 4 retreat cost on there. We're not manually retreating this thing. It's going to stay in the active until eventually it gets knocked out. So we're not super worried about that, but it is obviously worthwhile having switches to get things like Volcanions or maybe a Torkoal or even a Ninetales out of the active as well. And then obviously we have 4 copies of Crushing Hammer as well. We're about energy denial. We're trying to deny as many energy as possible, and Crushing Hammer in combination with our Drill Run attack can allow us to discard quite a few energy off of our opponent's active Pokemon. We also have 3 copies of Giant Hearth to help us find those fire energies, as well as 2 copies of Energy Spinner. That's going to be useful to help us find the fighting cost that we need to get our Rhyperior attacking. Obviously, without one of these 3 fighting energy, it's not particularly useful. We want to make sure that we can get those attachments as easily as possible, and Energy Spinner will do the job there. We also have 2 copies of Fire Crystal, just in case the 10 fire energy that we have in the deck are not enough, just in case we need to grab them back somehow, some way. I already mentioned the 1 copy of Reset Stamp, and that leaves just 1 more card left in this deck. Obviously, Rhyperior has 230 HP, which is quite a lot for a basic Pokemon, but we figured we'd add that little bit extra with Toughness Cape. Toughness Cape gives the basic Pokemon that this card attacks to an extra 50 HP, as long as it's not a GX, so that means that 50 extra HP for Rhyperior, a big 280 HP to be knocked out, and if you are struggling to get energy attachments, then it might just be a little bit too difficult for you. 270 also, by the way, is the number that Eternatus is going to be hitting, so if your opponent hasn't been smart with their Zigzagoon counts, then a Toughness Cape can survive a Rhyperior. You can get 1 shot without being knocked out, which is pretty solid when you consider the fact that this deck is going to be able to really put a number on Eternatus as the meta moves forward. I'm not sure that this is a great deck. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a bit concerned that we've done this one and Vikavolt in a row. I'm worried that we're starting to become a little bit too anti-meta or anti-people having fun. Playing copies of this card is always an issue, if you ask me. But hey, it's definitely a really cool card that can potentially get some knockouts. And with a reasonable energy cost, not amazing, but reasonable energy cost, you might be able to sneak yourself a couple of wins with Rhyperior once Darkness Ablaze arrives on the Pokemon Trading Card Game online ladder. So there it is, that's the list. Rhyperior V could potentially be something worth taking a look at if you have the time and the patience. For us, we'll be testing this deck out. Sorry, not a game. I'm still struggling with those words. We'll be testing this deck out in the next couple of days, so check that one out when you get the chance. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Click the button that is hovering over the Sableye around about now. On the left-hand side, we've got ourselves some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like, and on the right, we have a playlist of more of our Darkness Ablaze stuff, so check that out if you dare. Apart from that, I'm going to go. I'll get out of here, give you a chance to test this one out on Tabletop Simulator yourself. Thanks everyone for coming along, and we'll catch you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.